Breaking news now. After losing Armenia as an ally in the Ukraine conflict, Russia is now largely on its own in the international community. Armenia, a former Soviet Union state, has turned against Russia over its military actions in Ukraine, with Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan calling his country's alliance with Moscow a strategic mistake, and announcing joint military drills with the United States. Even countries that separated from the USSR and remained allies are reconsidering their relationship with Russia, further isolating Russian President Vladimir Putin over his invasion of Ukraine, launched in February of last year. Putin is becoming increasingly marginalized internationally. After invading Ukraine last year, he lost the support of many countries and leaders, including North Korea's Kim Jong-un. There have been reports that Armenia views its alliance with Russia as a strategic mistake, and that the country feels betrayed by Moscow as a result. Russia has been Armenia's go-to security provider. According to CNN, Prime Minister Pashinyan now views this reliance as a strategic mistake. He reasoned that Russia, which he believed was in need of arms itself, was no longer able to provide for Armenia's security. Stony Sergei Sobyanin, the stoic mayor of Moscow, has been entrusted by the Kremlin to maintain order in the Russian capital in the face of widespread opposition protests, the disastrous COVID-19 pandemic, and regular drone attacks from the Ukrainian government. For nearly 13 years, Sobyanin has presided over Europe's largest city. He is a member of the small group of technocrats who have kept Ukraine afloat despite the chaos of the conflict. On September 10, election officials declared him the convincing winner of the race to continue serving as mayor of the capital city. Russians fled their country in droves a year ago when President Vladimir Putin called up hundreds of thousands of men to fight in Ukraine. Less than a month later, however, Sobyanin announced that mobilization in Moscow had ended, bringing calm with him. The 65-year-old has positioned himself as the man who protects Moscow from the devastating effects of the conflict, despite regular drone attacks by the Ukrainian government. At a city forum in August, Sobyanin declared, "Despite the enormous number of difficulties, problems, and crises that we all go through together with the country, we win, we overcome these problems and become even stronger." Tatiana Stanovaya, a political analyst, argues that Putin will be profoundly affected by Sobyanin's ability to maintain control over the roughly 13 million people who live in Russia's political epicenter. "You have to be very careful around people in Moscow if you want to maintain control. Ignoring their irritation was her recommendation." Sobyanin entered local politics in the 1980s after working for a short time at a metal pipe factory after being born in a remote village in the Siberian region of Khinty-Mansi. Sobyanin had already spent over 4 years as governor of the oil-rich Siberian region of Tyumen before being appointed mayor of Moscow in 2010. Putin chose him to lead his presidency's administration back in 2005. Unlike the ex-KGB strongmen in Putin's inner circle, Sobyanin's political influence is often overlooked because of his straightforward leadership style and background as a former governor. Analysts say Putin's apparent trust in him as mayor of Russia's most populous and economically significant city is evidence of this. According to Stanovaya, he has significant political autonomy. And, she reassured us, he has no plans to run for office. You can't have political aspirations and work for Putin. For some reason, they are unable to. Because the system was designed so that nobody can hack it. As mayor, he oversaw massive infrastructure projects, including the largest expansion of the Moscow metro system in decades, and shut down many of the city's bustling, crime-ridden markets. He also instituted a bicycle sharing program and proposed demolishing Soviet-era prefab blocks to make way for new housing developments, both of which were met with widespread opposition. Sobyanin was the first official in Russia to declare a lockdown and impose stricter measures in the capital than in other cities during the COVID-19 pandemic. His reputation as a moderate reformer took a hit in 2019 when police suppressed demonstrations against highly contested local elections from which many independent candidates were excluded. Sobyanin could not manage the situation in a way that would be understandable for liberals, Stanovaya remarked. When Russia announced its special military operation in Ukraine in 2022, thousands more protesters were detained. He also hasn't reversed his predecessor's ban on Moscow's gay pride parades. His opponents in the election were all backed by Russia's political establishment, and the local media served as a PR machine for his campaign, so he was never really in danger of losing. In prison opposition leader Alexei Navalny said, "The 2023 Moscow mayoral elections are organized in such a way that no matter how you vote for Putin." When Navalny ran against Sobyanin in the city elections of 2013, he too lost. You have the option of casting a ballot, visiting the polling place out of curiosity, or not doing either. They are completely irrelevant, he declared.